Welcome to the ThinkFactory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Welcome to the ThinkFactory's Women's Roundtable podcast, where we learn how women think big and grow their business. My name is Elka Bahal. I'm a partner with Outside General Counsel Solutions and the chair of our Corporate Immigration Services Group, and I'm your host today. I am very pleased to have with me here Patricia Miller, owner of Blue Diamond Construction. Welcome to the podcast, Pat. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk with you.
Oh, me too. So you have navigated a really extraordinary journey to reach your current position, owning and operating Blue Diamond Construction. Can you elaborate a little bit for us what that path looked like and what led you here?
Well, it's a long story. So I always say when I was a little girl, I didn't sit around the table saying I want to own a construction company when I grow up. But it kind of fell into my lap. Young married couple. My husband was a union carpenter, always had to work. We started having children and I kind of took control of our future. And I said, I can't be unemployed more than we're employed. So I had a degree in accounting and a minor in business. And I wanted to stay home and raise our kids. So I took $100 out of his last layoff check and I got business cards and flyers made up. And I passed them out to all the empty stores because his forte was commercial carpentry. And we landed our first job. We went into business in Brick, New Jersey. And we continued to work together, raise our children, condensed story. We built the company, like I said, $100 bill, the American dream, right? So we built the company, got bigger and bigger. And then unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer in 2014, and life was really good. We were making money. We had the big house, the dog, the kids, all that. We thought we had it all figured out. But again, long story short, he was diagnosed with cancer. I took 2 years off to be his nurse, kind of fell into, very hard times financially. Spent my life savings trying to save his life because a lot of his treatments were not covered by the health insurance companies. They were considered experimental. So unfortunately, when he passed away 2 years after being diagnosed, I was the proud owner of a company that was not doing well financially because we didn't have any business for 2 years. So I had to roll my sleeves up and get back to work. And I rebuilt the company that we built together, bigger than it was. It was long, hard hours. I was determined. I was angry. I was grieving. I was a bag of emotions, but that's how I became the president of a construction company. It was fight or flight, and I had no options but to figure out how to survive. So I had a lot of loans to pay off. I was in debt and I had no money. Mm-hmm. So, before he passed away, I asked him, what am I going to do without you? And he said, you're going to do what you know how to do. You're going to continue to run the company. And I did, and it was scary. It was like kind of sitting on a chair without a leg, because when you're always together, and, me and my husband were high school sweethearts. So we were together for over 30 years. So it was scary, but I kind of didn't think about it. That's how I became president and owner of Blue Diamond Construction. So
wow, Pat, what an amazing journey you've been through. Your story is really a story of resilience.
It really is.
And you built this company up twice now.
Yeah, I did. I just got off the phone with someone and I said I kind of had a condensed version of a reality TV show when they build those houses overnight. I had to build my career overnight. It's like, oh my God, everybody thinks they have it all figured out.
Right.
It can happen to anyone, and it happened to us. It's unfortunate. My husband had no symptoms. He went to work and he called me and he said he started peeing blood in the porta-john. Changed my life. My life did a 180 in one day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's scary. But it happened. And I always say without, you know, being, I don't know. I always say my husband's death allowed me to become the woman I was destined to be. So he did not die in vain. He allowed me to become the person and the woman I was destined to be. Because, when you're married and, old school, I always took the back seat. I was always in the office. I was the necessary evil. I was doing the construction, bids and the procurement and, the administration, the accounting. I was never out in the field. And now I have to do both. But it keeps me busy. It didn't give me time to think about grieving. That's for sure, Alka.
And not only are you sort of having to rebuild were you having to rebuild the business, but you're a woman in the construction company. Even now in 2024, that's rare. I can only imagine when you first started the business.
Yeah. I mean, I often tell the story. I would come out on the job sites in the early 90s and I was not welcome at all. These men were they just didn't think a job site was a place for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They always asked me for coffee or do this and go get that. And then they realized that my signature was on their paychecks. So, my husband, he was a man's man. So he said, just play the part. Just don't listen to them. We're a team. I'll take care of the field. But, fast forward 30 years, it's not as bad.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have a lot of similarities because, the mindset is still there. Some older boys, I'm older now, but, children learn what they live, right? So if they live with, men that think women shouldn't be on job sites, that's what they're going to learn. Mm-hmm. But it's getting better. It's getting better. I'm a little bit different. I always tell everybody because I'm in the field. I actually go out and lay the project out with my lead guys. So I am in the field. I do have work boots. I do snap lines. I am responsible for the entire project. I put the walls where they're supposed to be. There are a lot more women in the industry, and I'm proud to say that. That's one of my things that I want to work on before, I leave this great earth is making sure women know they have options. Construction gave me a very good life. It really did. It allowed me to raise my children, to be for them after the bus, to allow them to see the flexibility of seeing them play sports. And, we all like nice things. It gave me a good life. And I want women to know it is an option. And now more than ever, Alka, because there's so many different opportunities in construction. But I urge women that are in construction to get out on the site. It's important to show your face. There's nothing more than seeing it actually being put together. A picture only gives you part of the whole equation. So, that's where I am now. I am in the field and in the office. So I do both now.
I like to hear that. That's really good advice. So do you feel when you do go out into the field, are you different now, attitude, thought-wise, than you were, say, 10 years ago when you were trying to rebuild initially?
Yeah. I mean, we all change as we get older. Years ago, first of all, you have to have thick skin to be in construction, especially a woman.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, you have to. These guys, you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's whatever. I try to treat people. I always say, I just had a conversation with my girl the other day. I said, look, they're all jerks. Okay. They could be mean, but I give people a pass. We're all human. Some people are going through some stuff. Some people have financial issues. Their kids are sick. Their wife is sick. They don't feel good. They didn't sleep. The baby's crying, right? We're all human. We all have lives. So I try to give everybody a pass. Years ago, I'd fight with everybody. I kind of don't do that. I've mellowed a little bit over time. I pick and choose my battles. Mm-hmm. But, I try, I'm a lot different. When I was going on site for the first time after my husband died, Yeah, I was different. I was angry because of how I had to present myself on site. And I tell that story in my book. I did write a book about it, Kicking Karma's Ass. I kind of had no choice. I had a very mean man who told me if I didn't show up on site, I would lose the only contract I had when my husband was dying. So he was a jerk, right? Class A, but he helped me grieve, and I was angry. But I turned that anger. I can only give advice we're all products of our experiences in life, right? It's how you react to those experiences that you can turn a negative into a positive, right? Nobody's going to come and ring the doorbell with a big check and red balloons and say you want $1 million. You have no choice. You have to rebuild your life. You have to go out there and you have to deal with the people. So am I different? Yes, I get different. I think monthly. I kind of pick and choose my battles. Life is getting shorter and shorter as we're here, as the days go by. And, I'll battle for what I feel is important, but I'm still running across guys with attitudes. There's the ones that like to control a woman on site until they realize that that woman might possibly know more than them.
That must be a gratifying moment.
And then it is a theater. I call it a theater of egos. Some are larger than others. We're all in the same play, different characters, right? So, you kind of tend to bounce around them. I have an interesting background where I grew up with men. So I kind of understand how they tick. I do get along better with men than women, believe it or not, because I'm around them my whole life. Mm-hmm. I had 4 brothers, 2 sons, 8 nephews, and I'm in construction. So, you kind of understand that men and women are really different and they react differently. And I realized over the time and, around men that they're very simple creatures, I say. They are. They don't like drama. They don't. They're very simple. Some of them like anything else. Some of them aren't. But, that's my generalization. But look, basically, they're good guys. There's some of them that are jerks. It's like any other trade, any other industry. You have good people and bad people.
Of course, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that probably gave you a leg up. You understand men, you're comfortable working around men, and now you're in an environment which is really male dominated, but it sounds like it doesn't necessarily intimidate you that you're working with all of these guys. You hold your own, and if they don't like it, they don't like it, and if they do, great.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, if I can give any young woman or any woman who's building a business any advice, it's confidence. You cannot allow anyone to kill your confidence. That is in my story, that was the key to success. You have to walk into that room and own the room. If you don't know it, there's so many opportunities for you to find out. There's more resources now than there ever was. So, be informed, stay confident, control the room, and, don't own yourself. Don't allow anybody to disrespect you, but you have to learn to balance. That's another thing I advise. Balance. There's a fine line with being loud and being heard. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to communicate at times of, belittling or, talking down to. You have to learn to come across and put them in their place without being disrespectful. It's kind of an art, right?
It really is an art, I would say. Yes, it's a skill you have to hone with some practice.
Yeah, there's a story in my book about that, how I walked into a room of, I think, 40 men. I was the only woman. So it was a meeting for a big job, a kickoff meeting, and there was guys there that knew me, and there was guys there that didn't know me. So there was some that wanted to speak up in front of everybody and talk down to me. And then, it's a good story in my book.
Oh, let's talk about your book for a second. Kicking
Yeah.
Karma's Ass. Unbelievable stories of strength, resilience, and preservation. I can't even say it. Preservance. All told with a twist of humor.
Yeah. It's
amazing.
perseverance, because that's my middle name is Perseverance. You got to keep going, girl.
That.
So, yeah. So I wrote the book. The book is very personal story. Talk about how things in your life change you. I was never a social person, like as in social media. I was a firm believer if I wanted to talk to somebody or show them what I'm eating for dinner or where I'm on vacation, I would call them up, right? Mm-hmm. But there was always talk at my dinner table when my husband was alive, God rest his soul. He always said, this is an insane industry. We got to write a book. You should write a book. And I'd say, you're right, because if we wrote a book, nobody would believe it. So it was always talk over the 30 years, before he passed, about writing a book. And then, a long story short, I had a dream and my husband was in the dream. I don't know who believes what, but this is just how it came about. And he told me to write the book. And I said, oh, okay. So I woke up and it felt so real. And then it was the holidays and my sister is very spiritual. She came over. She goes, well, I had a dream last night. Your husband was in it. I go, oh God, what did he say? He said to tell you to write the book and you would know what I'm talking about. Oh, so wow. Strange, but that's how it happened. So I had always taken notes over the years. And I said, you know what? After, I had a terrible chain of events happen. Not just my husband passing away, but my brother passed away unexpectedly. Then my mom died the next year, and then my dad, and then my husband. My husband's being treated for cancer with all this craziness. And I sat, they all passed within 3 years, and 4 very important people to me passed away, and I contemplated, why did all this happen? So I dug deep. I did a kind of, as they say, a life review on what happened, why things happened, and you kind of, realize that everything has a purpose in life, right? So as I read through my notes with the book, because when my sister told me that, I said, I guess I'm writing a book, right? So I started putting my notes together, and then I contacted a publisher and I wrote the book. And the book is a great book, in my opinion, very personal, totally unlike me, but I felt it needed to be told because I wanted to connect with people who are going through some, stuff in life. I wanted to kind of be their beacon, hold the light up in their darkness, and show them all the things that happened to me and how I rebuilt my life and how I kept humor in my life to keep me going. So it tells stories about everything, my childhood, how I grew up, how I was molded to become the person I am, and how I pull from my childhood experiences in my adult life, especially being an entrepreneur. And it's very odd when you reflect back, you realize that you're taught certain things throughout your life that someday you most likely, I'm not going to say always, will utilize in your personal life. So the book has gotten really good accolades. People can relate. I'm just a Jersey girl, right? I'm a Jersey girl in construction. I'm just an average person and I'm relatable. So, I tell my story. It did go #1 internationally. It's won a few awards. I'm not, that's not what I do for a living. I don't write books. I'm not J.K. Rowling, right? But I had a story to tell and I think it came out good. I think it's helped a lot of people based on the, the responses I've gotten through email and instant messaging. And I'm happy that it has. I always said my goal with writing the book was if I can help one person, then the book is a success story, right? So it's helping more than one person. It's Absolutely. Helping thousands. Yeah. So
your title is completely on point. And as you said, it is very relatable. Your stories are enlightening, to say the least, but, seeing you or hearing your story and seeing you rise as the phoenix from the ashes and everything, you were under a crushing amount of stress and pain, and look at you now. You have risen again. So where can folks get your book if they're interested?
Oh, they can find it on Amazon, of course. Amazon has everything, and Barnes and Noble. We have it listed there as well, barnesandnoble.com. But yeah, it's a quick read. It's a nice little book, couple hundred pages. There's some humor in there. There's some construction stories. There's some childhood stories. And then there's some healthcare stories, right? I was adamant with my publisher to, balance the book as well. We're back to that word. I didn't want to be too depressing, too sad. I wanted to bring some stories into it, about who I am as a person and how I could help people stay positive and move forward in their life when, life throws you curveballs. You got to keep going. You got to get out of bed. I always say you got to get out of bed.
That's amazing. Your journey has really been amazing, and what you have evolved yourself into is very impressive. So
Thank you.
Shifting topics a little bit, let's talk a little bit more sort of about the workplace. You have been really in a leadership position in the construction industry for decades now. And I'm sure the workplace has evolved. What traits do you believe are essential in today's workplace for effective leadership?
Well, I think I touched on a little bit of that earlier. I think traits are you cannot have thin skin. Okay, you are the leader if you're going to be the owner. People do look up to you. I think respect is huge. I respect my men that work for me. Without my men, I wouldn't have a company. So I'm really big on that. I treat people with respect because we're all human. Once again, they all have their own lives. Without them, I wouldn't have a company. So, and I think the confidence is huge and knowledge. You have to be knowledgeable. Whatever you're doing, whether it's construction, law, right? Be informed. Get any information you can. The cutting edge technology is also really big, Alka. You got to stay with the times. It's constantly evolving, different parts of the trades, different technologies, programs. It's just always changing. So I think that's essential too. So, it's a balancing act of being the leader, being respectful, being confident, and being knowledgeable. So it's a balancing act once again.
So are you always sort of looking around to see what are the changes, what are the trends, what are the newest technologies or techniques?
Always. Yeah. So, a little history about my company. We have brought our company through 4 recessions. Plus this last one, I don't know. I always tell everybody, I don't know what that one's called. The last 3 years. Not really sure. But it hasn't been easy on the construction industry. But you always have to reinvent yourself. And what I mean by that is I tell a story a lot. In the early ages of our company, almost 95% of our business was retail. That's all we did. We did retail stores, right? Black Friday was the big thing. Overtime, get the store built. We don't care. We'll pay you, whatever. We did retail. Big box retail was our forte. And what big box retail is the larger stores like Burlington's and the Home Depots and the bigger stuff, Best Buys. And then who came along? Amazon, right? And then the brick and mortar started going down.
Yeah.
Well, we did an awful lot of Bed Baths, where they are. We did a lot of Christmas tree shops, where they are. So the economy kind of ate through the retail industry, and my husband said, what are we going to do? And I said, well, it looks like we got to reinvent ourselves. So I stay informed. I look and see what the trends are, what's coming up. So when I said to him, looks like we're going to be doing a lot of healthcare, that was when all the, dialysis centers and 24-hour healthcare, walk-in clinics, they're all big now, right? So they were all being satellite emergency rooms, just the smaller scale hospitals and stuff like that. So we started angling our company towards that. We would connect with our clients who did those buildings. And we're doing it again, right? So then that kind of fell to the wayside, and it was mid-rise residential, turning office buildings into apartments. And that's really still pretty strong right now, is housing. I call it commercial residential because they're built as a commercial building, but it's a residential environment.
Yeah.
And I'm always staying in touch with people. And I think the next big change is going to be prefabricated structural metal, which they tried years ago with wood for like apartments and hotels. So I'm always staying in touch with people in the industry about the changes and, you know, new programs and new estimating programs. And you have to kind of stay in touch with, you got to keep your finger on the pulse of your industry, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have to stay competitive with what's new. Everybody can hang drywall. I always say that, right?
Yeah.
It's very competitive. So how do you make yourself different? How do you get more business? You have to do what other people are not doing so often. And that typically comes with certifications and knowledge and time you put into learning the new trends. That's my opinion. I believe the more I teach my kids that, you know, they're men now, the more certifications you get, the more you raise yourself as being valuable. Right?
Yeah, I agree. And so you're always looking to the horizon for the next thing and the next step in the evolution. I would venture to say that that's a critical component to your success.
It is. And you have to stay in touch with what architects are speccing, new products, vinyl ceilings are big now. You got to stay in touch with all that stuff because if you don't know it, how are you going to be able to build it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then do you sort of come back to your team and say, you know, here's an area where we need to improve our expertise and or we're going to, you know, start pitching, you know, I don't know if the construction for medical facilities is different than the other construction. Did you go to the team and say, well, we need to develop these skills or these techniques because I'm pitching it here?
Actually, that's weird you said that because I just talked to my crew on site a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I showed them a picture of a blueprint. I said, you see this? Yeah. I said, who knows how to frame like this and who doesn't? And I talked to the guys that did and they said, yeah, we can do that. I just did that, right? I did that like last year for somebody else. And then I tell them, well, we need to find a crew that supports all this type of shit. I'll give you an example. Radiuses, right? Some guys don't know how to frame radiuses. Some guys do. So radius track, you have to know how to work with it, how to lay it out, how to create a template, how to put it up in the air, and how to build the radiuses. So, you know, I do talk to my men in the field. I find out who knows what, you know, because generally I'm a metal framer. That's what I hang my hat on. I do all aspects of commercial carpentry, but metal framing is our forte. So there's different aspects of it. There's structural, there's clips, there's bridging, you know, and then there's interior, and that comes along with different skill set with angled walls, radius walls. So yeah, I do. The answer to that is yes. I speak with my men. I find out who can do what. Not everybody's available that I work with over the years. I have a very large database of workforce. So, everybody kind of does their thing and comes back to me. But I try to stay in touch and keep my finger on the pulse of my current crew and what their abilities are. So it's important to know. Yep.
And it sounds like you have sort of this core crew and this sort of set of loyal workers. What are some of the unique aspects of your company culture that you're proud of and that you think contribute to these long-term relationships?
Like I said earlier, I treat them like human beings. I am not.
Because they don't always get that.
No, they don't. And you know what? Here's a big one. You ready for this? I actually pay them. There's so many guys that go and they, you know, I often say in construction, jobs don't end on Friday and start a new one on Monday. So you'll have downtime. You know, I'll tell my guys, look, I need a couple of weeks to get this next job started. Don't worry about it, lady boss. I have to do an addition on my cousin's house or this or that. They keep busy and then they come back to me. You know, it's the only way I can stay competitive, but I don't treat them like a machine. You know, I expect them, I understand that things happen. I don't yell at them if they make a mistake. I just ask that they learn from the mistake and don't do it again because mistakes do cost money. I respect them as fathers, family. I ask them how their kids are doing. You know, I'll talk to them at the holidays. I'll let them go early. I treat them like human beings. You know, there's a lot of companies that I compete with that don't do that. They want them to do 60 boards of drywall a day or they get rid of them. Not any one company in particular. It's just the stories that they guys tell me. And, I kind of give them free rein. Sometimes it backfires, but I'm pretty shrewd. I know how long things should take. I know if I'm not on site and I come back and something's not done, I know they weren't really working. I don't yell at them, but I'll question them. What happened? Really? You couldn't get 20 feet of wall framed? What happened? So I'll question them that way, and they kind of look at me and they know that I know what they
what's going on.
But look, it's like anything else. Not everybody's always on, okay? You know, you got to take the good with the bad. There's also days where they frame up 200 feet of wall, right? So you have to take the good with the bad. And, you know, if it happens over and over and you start losing money, that's a different story.
Right.
But I think it's important that I treat them with respect. I give them trust. I don't hang all over them. I give them a task. And, you know, like I said, I'm in the field and out of the field. I have a lot of meetings. So I don't stay on top of them. I have a lead guy there. And then, you know, and I respect them as husbands and fathers, and they have lives, you know. They're not, guys have to take off sometimes, right? So
everybody does, right?
Yeah, people get sick, you know. All I ask is for communication. Communication is key. If I'm promising my client something's going to be done by Friday, if you can't come in, you just got to tell me. That's all I ask them. I understand stuff happens, but we got to move guys around to get something done on one job. That's all.
I love that.
Yeah.
You can see that comes through your personality. Just being straightforward, direct with people, honest.
Very direct.
Communication.
Yep,
I love that.
I don't sugarcoat anything. Look, I always say I don't own a ballerina company. I own a construction company. It could be pretty rough sometimes. And they laugh at me, you know, because sometimes they see this blonde, you know, yelling and screaming. But I laugh when I'm done yelling, right?
Right.
So, like, come on, guys. Don't make me crazy. You're going to kill me.
Right.
Yeah. So you got to keep the humor. Definitely have to keep the humor. And I would say if you speak with most guys that usually work for me, some of the guys have been working for me almost 20 years, you know, 15, 20 years. They'll come back to me. They work with a lot of different contractors. They come back to me because it's a little bit nicer environment, and I don't steal their money.
Yeah, a big component there. I didn't know that was a big problem.
It happens a lot where, you know, look, nowadays everybody's a contractor, but you have to be able to float your payroll to be a real contractor, right?
Right. Yeah.
You can't tell a working man who has to pay rent that you didn't get paid by the GC.
Right. And it's going to take 3 weeks.
They don't pay these guys because they didn't get paid. It's not right. So I always make sure that I pay my men first and then I pay my own bills second. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I just think it's right for me.
Right. Right.
You know, I think it's important.
Understand.
Yeah, you have to be able to pay your manpower and your suppliers because without materials you can't build.
Right.
And without men you can't build. So I don't cheat people out of money. I think it's bad karma. We're back to that word again.
Back to your karma. It all comes full circle. Well, I think it's a business model that works. So it definitely makes sense. What predictions do you have for the future of work in the construction industry, say in the next 5 years? What's next?
Oh, I just think I touched on that a little bit. I think these are all my opinions. I know a lot of guys have been in the industry 30 plus years as well. And I always talk to everybody to see if my opinions are wrong. I think I'm on track with this one. The skilled craftsman pool is shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about craftsmen, like guys who could build a bookcase and can also frame a wall and can also hang a ceiling and door, right? So a complete master carpenter. It's shrinking. A lot of those guys are retired or they passed away, and the workforce is getting smaller and smaller for those higher echelon carpenters.
Mm-hmm.
There are still some. I think prefabrication, I touched on that earlier. I think it's come a long way for structural framing. They're amazing at what they do. It's framed in a controlled environment. It's delivered to the site. It has sealed drawings. It's a complete package. And then you could take your crew and you basically have to put together an erector set, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marked, part A goes to part B, and you still need your foreman and your top guy to run the guys, but then you're able to complete a building with more laborers, per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
you need less skill to assemble a prefab part.
I truly feel that that's the future of commercial. Stick framing, they call it, framing on site. You still have to do it. You're not going to be able to do a lot of those interior walls with the prefab. It's usually your shell walls, your structural walls. But it's, in the end, it saves time, money. When you're dealing with large construction projects, every day is money, right? Construction loans, interest, insurance, construction insurance. So it's all part of, it may cost a little bit more than, say, wood framing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big argument. Metal and wood's cheaper, but there's a lot of consultants that lay out the groundwork on the comparative cost. It's actually, in the long run, it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a better rating, and you get a better fire rating, and in turn you get lower insurance to insure the building. So there's a lot of moving parts to the industry. I personally think we're going in that direction for the larger projects, because you can use more or less skilled. So if you take a guy that could lay out, right, and run 50 guys, you're going to pay him good money, right? $50 an hour. But then you don't need guys that are making 40 an hour. You can get guys that make 20 an hour, because they're going to be on site and they're going to be putting part A together with part B. Not that they don't need to know the industry, but it's not as much skill, right? The box headers are in place. Some of the more tougher aspects of the components are already completed. So that's my opinion. I think it's going in that direction. I'll see. Things change every day, every year, right?
Right. Yeah. All you can do is watch and try and stay ahead of it, right?
Exactly. So.
Oh, that's amazing. So I do have one last question for you that I did not prepare you for in our pre-podcast call.
Okay.
So this is the question we ask all of our podcast guests, and it's a very open-ended question. What keeps you up at night?
I love it. What keeps me up at night? Typical business stuff. All the jobs I have sitting on my estimating table, when they're due, what do I have left to do on them? It's all about completion. That keeps me up at night. Oh God, I can't forget to do that. Okay, I can't forget to do that. So, I always say in my industry, Alka, every time I finish a job, I'm unemployed.
Oh, interesting perspective. Yeah.
So there's no golden parachute in the construction industry. So I often laugh when people say, oh, I'm unemployed. I worked for this company for 10 years. It's horrible. Every time I finish a job, I'm unemployed. It's my job to go out and get another job. Nobody brings them to me. I have to get another job. So that keeps me up at night. The constant scheduling that's in your head. Okay, I have this job. It starts in February. It'll be done in April. Typically, my industry, I'm bidding now for jobs in the summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're 4 to 6 months ahead. So you have to constantly turn that page and keep going and see what you have. And where else does that go? In your head, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you have to file that in your head, and you have to keep track of all of that, plus your men on site and making sure that they have enough materials and what they need to be productive, because if you're not productive, you don't make money. So there's a lot of things that keep me up at night.
Yeah. It's all the different aspects.
Very well.
When do you sleep, Pat?
I know. I sleep like 5 hours a night. Like, oh my God.
Why?
I get up and I walk the dog and I'm like, all right, I might as well make coffee. I got a bid to do. Let me finish that now. So.
Well, Pat, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. I loved hearing your story. It's very inspiring. Your resilience is just incredible. I'm impressed every time we talk about it. So thank you for being here.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I hope someone out there can get something from our conversation, and they could always reach out to me. I have a website, patmiller.net. I read emails all the time.
Wonderful. So you heard it here, folks. You can reach out to Pat. Pat, your advice has been terrific. I hope a few folks reach out to you because I think you give good sound advice and good recommendations there.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. This is Elka Bahal from Outside General Counsel Solutions signing off with the ThinkFactory's Women's Roundtable podcast. Until next time.